Hello, everybody. This is James Pack. I'm your instructor for the environment class at CGMW. Thanks for joining me and everyone at CGMW. First, I'd just like to introduce myself and give you a little bit of information about me. As you know, my name is James Pack. I'm a concept artist outside of Los Angeles, and I work mainly in video games and movies. My focus is environment design, creating worlds, doing production illustrations for environments and sets, and if you really think about it, a lot of prop design as well, because the environment is what kind of houses all the props, buildings, vehicles, and everything all together. A lot of the time my focus is blue sky, which means the very early high concept phase of a project where nothing's really going into production yet, which means nothing that I draw necessarily will always be made into the final into the final game or film, but a lot of it is to produce more ideas based on the blue sky illustrations that I do. Anyway, so on your screen is a demo that I did for CGMW a while back. Just a little screen holder for me right now as I introduce myself, and something for you guys to look at. Basically, what we want to do in this class is just basically go over the general notes of how I build my environments, what rules and regulations I like to follow, the theories. So the things we'll be going over are a lot of basic composition, perspective, and value studies. Those are super, super important to any solid illustration, whether you're a character designer, an environment artist. It really doesn't matter. If you have those compositional skills and be able to paint confidently in black and white, that's a very, very good head start. So we'll be also going into color as well, doing a little bit of basic color theory and color studies, and also a little bit of your own environment creation. For most people, when they take an environment class, it's because they want to become a concept artist. So this is definitely something that kind of goes hand in hand. So a good concept artist to me is one that is able to do a lot of solid painting, has good illustration skills, but at the same time has a very vivid imagination and is able to translate their imagination into really solid designs. So if you can do that, then yeah, that's a really, really good start. And I'm just going to share with a couple of the tips and tricks that I know, that I've been taught as well, and hopefully we'll be able to come out with some good pieces for you guys to do some nice to get a nice portfolio going. So let me get rid of this. I use regular Photoshop. I believe it's CS2 or CS3, I'm not really sure. I don't really upgrade my Photoshop too often. I kind of get used to one and kind of stick with it for a while. So let's see here. I don't know why this isn't closing. Anyways, I'll just do that. So first, let's start off. I'll show some of my work that I have. A lot of the stuff is throughout the years, and let me see here, list. So there's some stuff that I'm not able to show, so I'm going to stay away from that. But here are just some really early on environments that I used to do. These were when I was working at NCSoft, and these were just world creation images for the new Guild Wars game. A lot of these really haven't seen the light of day yet, but there's some stuff that's pretty cool, stuff that I like to do, and these are some of the things that I'll be showing you how I like to work, because they are definitely within line. So here's a lot of stuff that I did for Uncharted 2. I'll actually make this thing right. And so a lot of the stuff that we'll be able to do when you are a concept artist is actually do a lot of 3D paint over. So this is a screen capture. You just really got to dress it up, give it some lighting and things like that, And those are definitely some of the things that are really fun to do. So I'm just going to skim through these pretty quickly. Um, so this game in particular was really fun. Here's actually some prop design, some vehicles, trains in the game. If you ever played the game, you probably recognize some of these. Now going on to some interiors, these are huts that are in a large level in the game. And the black and white studies, they were really fun to do. It really helped me focus on designing elements versus trying to design mood necessarily with color. So these are really fun to do. Here's a color piece. Going into some more just general establishing shots and mood shots for train levels, some basic drawing. One of the biggest tips that I can give to any artist that's starting off is the digital medium, meaning like digital painting, Photoshop and Painter or whatnot, is definitely a great tool. It does not substitute being a solid painter and a solid drawer, a draftsman, with a pen and pencil or a paintbrush. I would highly recommend if excuse me, if any of you are not into doing that, definitely give it a try. It'll help you grow as a digital artist even more. So it's definitely something really to look into. The way I started out was I was an illustration major when I was going to art center, and that was our focus. A lot of drawing, a lot of painting with oils, acrylics, gouache, and that gave me a really, I believe, a more solid footing into jumping into the digital medium. So it's just another tool. It's not a substitute. So a lot of these were really fun. I mean, imagination takes it a long way. But at the same time, you have to, sort of realize that there's a lot that has to be portrayed in an image that you are trying to illustrate. You have mood, you're trying to show times of day, you're trying to show different textures. You have this cement-like structures and organic materials on top. Direction of light, you have cool temperatures over here, you have warm temperatures over here, so you want to show scale. Here's an example of trying to show scale. You have a small guy in the foreground over here, and he's just looking at this massive city and its expanse as it goes into the background. So that's a lot of that. I'll show you guys some more work hopefully as more things get permitted. Here are some of my personal work illustrations that I've done. Just a mixture of all different types of approaches, using a lot of photo, paint, this and that, just trying all different sorts of things just to come out with a cool image and, being a little bit experimental. One of the great things about Photoshop is that you're able to do that. Again, using photos, I would say, is a more advanced technique, even though it does give you a very quick result early. I'm not really going to be going into using much photo in this class. It's much more important to be a solid, artist without using a lot of photo. And as you get more comfortable with that, dropping in the occasional texture, the occasional, bit of photo can enhance the work. You definitely want to be able to draw it out before you start using a lot of texture to do the work for you. Some people won't agree with that. That's the way I work, and hopefully you guys will just kind of follow along with me. So again, these are all just personal work. Some of these have been published in some books like Expose or Spectrum or whatnot. So yeah, just a lot of sketches. These are really fun. So let me close this up. So let me talk to you guys really quickly about some general notes. All right, so let's get started. Here in my Photoshop, I'll just quickly show you guys some of the just general aspect ratios and basic compositional notes that I like to follow, and then we'll get right into starting a little bit of painting today using some of those ideas. So let's get started. So I have this page open right here. As you can see, it says 1.85 to 1 to 235 to 1 aspect ratio. That just basically means, you know, the size, the long dimension is the 1.85, all ranging to 2.35 to 1. That's usually a lot of the cinematic film aspect ratios that people use. So those are definitely some things that I like to use to kind of fall within those lines, because everything that is going to be seen is either going to be on a TV with a video game, maybe on a widescreen computer monitor, or perhaps, you know, just the movie screen. So those are definitely things I like to follow. So to start off a little bit more, you know, here we go into just basic ideas of composition. Now, I'll run through all this and then we'll do a recap and talk about this pretty much every single week, because these are the most important notes that I like to follow. The first thing I like to do is make sure that anytime I'm breaking down my composition, I want to break everything down into thirds. So this long side is broken up into three basically general equal sections, along with, you know, the side as well. And this kind of gives me a grid, you know, so everything's broken down into thirds. The reason for this is it gives me the ability to better break apart the space without having equal parts. When you have equal masses, like a 50-50 split, it kind of gives you the illusion that it's very flat because they're two equal masses. If you had something small and large, now you get to see scale. You might be able to see distance and perspective and things like that. So that's definitely something, a big reason why I want to kind of fall within the third breakdown. Now, where these lines start to intersect, you know, you have four basic intersecting lines. This is where I like to put my ideal focal points. And focal points are really important, because you don't want an image that has no direction to it. You don't want an image where people don't know where to look. Now, if you do know where you want the person to look, the viewer to look, where are you going to put those areas? These big green circles here are ideal for those big first focal points. You know, maybe a person, maybe there's some character interaction, maybe it's the prop that you're trying to show. Focal point doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you're trying to show an object per se. It could also be, you know, look at the sunset, look at the environment going all the way back to the horizon line. That could be a focal point as well. So it really depends on what you want the viewer to look at. There's no rule. You're the artist. You get to create all of these things for the viewer to look at. And with some of these ideas of focal point placement, you can really help the person understand where to look. So I'm going to use this area over here as section 1 as my first focal point. Pretty simple. Now, there's a whole bunch of space around this area over here. A lot of space, a lot of space, a lot of space. What do you do with it? Sometimes, you know, hey, I have for example, I'm going to put a person over here, but, you know, in some other parts of the environment, I want some other people as well, or some other interesting things to look at. Now, where can I put those? Those can be secondary focal points. Now, if I use this idea, I could use this space, this big space, right, as another canvas, and basically break that apart into another third. You see that? Another third breakdown. So now I could choose another focal point here. See that? So I got number 1, I got number 2. Maybe if I want a third one, I can place one over here as well. So I got that going on. And you see, number 1 is a large focal point. number 2 becomes smaller, and number 3 is even smaller than that. That's going to help you prioritize what you want people to look at. And if you kind of think about this, this is a great idea, because a lot of the time when we have let me just do some really quick sketching here. If you have some dots, okay, if you have some dots, something like this, what the brain starts to do, okay, is it connects these dots. And even though these dots are independently they have no connection to each other whatsoever, the person starts to see some kind of movement. So it's really important to kind of understand that theory of how people see things, and I'll go into that throughout the rest of the class, talking about the way people see things, why people react to certain objects or not. The idea of how these connect the dots is really important. So let me see here. Let me get rid of all that. So if you think about 1 over here and 2, this doesn't really show much movement. Okay, it's pretty static. You add another one over here, now you got some movement going on. Okay, really important, because 3 is always going to be the magic number. Very, very important. I always like to design everything with the rule of 3. So try not to forget that. I'll pretty much repeat it every minute or so. Because it's a pretty important thing to remember. So close that down. Now since I have that, you see this? You see how it connects these dots? Very, very important. Creating eye movement and motion in your composition. Super, super important. This could be, a lot of different things. If you look through a lot of artists that you really admire, current artists, even artists from the Orientalist book. If you guys don't have that book, try to get a hold of it. It's a really rare book, but an awesome book for reference, and great paintings in there. They use a lot of these theories to move the eye around, where to place things in the composition. It's really, really awesome. So try to get a hold of it. So remember, rule of 3, third breakdown. Pretty simple, right? Okay, so now let's move on. Now we'll start talking about values. Okay, values, black and white. Pretty simple, but you have everything in between, all different shades of gray in between, and basically you have 1 being the lightest value, 10 being the darkest, 1 being white, 10 being black. To me, pure white and pure black are values that you don't really want to use too often. You want to use them very sparingly. Reason for that is they're so powerful. They pop so much, and if you're not careful with things, your paintings could look really too contrasting. Too much white, too much black. A lot of great paintings or successful paintings, I would say, have a very good value range. And this is the value range that I like to use. Most of all is values 2 through 9. So you're able to show a lot of value range, and every once in a while, if you want to show a really strong cast shadow or a highlight on top of a spaceship or something like that, you could use that white or you could use that black. Okay, so I would recommend you to only use 1 and 10 as being accents, to kind of push just a little bit highlight or push a little bit dark, but all the things that you wanted to start painting, I would say 2 through 9 is the best value range. Okay, so how do you organize all this? You have 10 values, you have composition, you have all this stuff going on all at once. How do you start breaking it down? Think about breaking it down as simply as possible. Okay, so here we go. Light, medium, and dark. 3 values. Again, the number 3 is popping up. 3 values, really, really simple. You have light, medium, dark. Pretty simple, right? One of the best things to do if you're starting out with painting is you want to clump things together. You don't want to start in one corner of the composition, like down here, and start painting your way out. You want to be able to do a broad stroke across the whole canvas to kind of, get everything in place. And this is a really good way to break down the three values. So let's talk about value grouping now. Value grouping is a really good way to is a good way to show if to how to control certain areas of dark and certain areas of light. Here are two examples. Okay, really simply kind of put together, but it just shows how I like to use the ratio of light and dark. I don't want a composition where half of it is light and half of it is dark. I want to stay away from any 50-50 equal mass breakdowns as possible. I don't want it. But what I do want is I want to be able to use, again, the idea of 3 or thirds. Okay, so you can kind of see over here this kind of shape in the corner. A third of it is light and 2/3 of it is dark. It's using the 1:3 ratio. Third of it is dark. 2/3 of it is light. Another, third ratio. So third ratio of light to dark or dark to light, whichever way you want to kind of push it. Really depends on what you're trying to paint, what's your purpose, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Again, I'll be going over this again later on. Now, so we have the basic ideas of all this stuff over here, how to break stuff apart, how to control your values. Now it's what the heck do you paint? Okay, what do you paint? What do you paint? What do you paint? So let's think about it this way. Here I have a basic line drawing. Okay, doesn't really make much sense. It could be broken glass. For if someone could see it that way, it could look like something else. Once we start to put some values on it, now we start to see a bit of separation, you see. So one of the rules I like to follow is the objects closest to me as the viewer are the darkest. Okay, and if it's a decent outside day, like a regular sunny day, you're gonna have what's called atmospheric perspective, which pushes objects lighter as things get further away from me. Again, so atmospheric perspective, just simply put, darker up front, lighter as it goes back. And this is only talking about values, not color. Okay? So if you want to think about this as a rock shape, this rock is right next to me, and I took a picture, it's going to be really dark. Now I have this mid-ground area. Okay, it's probably like a ground. That's going to be like the medium gray, the three values. Now I got some background mountain back here, and it's going to be one of the lighter values. And I have the sky, which is just white, but definitely I don't want to just leave it just white. So foreground, middle ground, background. Now you kind of see how if I kind of break this thing down, right here, it's at about a third area. Okay, you see that right around there? That's what I was focusing on when I was painting this, as a sketch. I like this area right here. So the midground, that's where the action takes place. I know that with a third breakdown rule, you're breaking down the lines in the composition, you're finding the ideal focal point. Where do you place the focal point in terms of how far they are from the viewer? Okay, you don't want it really in the foreground. That's kind of just too much, too in your face, in my opinion. In the background, sometimes you could have it back there, but it kind of really depends. But for me, if you're going to have some character interaction or like a fight or some kind of interesting interaction, you'd probably just want it to be, in the midground. So, let's talk a little about just 1, 2, 3, foreground, middle ground, background. Again, the number 3 comes up. Excuse me. So later on, we'll definitely be getting environments to be a bit more intricate and have a lot of depth and layers. Some of the things are, you just start inserting other sub kind of panels in between these big sections. So you could have basically 3 layers of a foreground kind of all up in this area around here. You could have a couple layers of midground, just creating more overlap and whatnot. So now let's start going into a little bit more of this. So this is basically the painting, a painting that I did off of that sketch. Okay, kind of turn that on. You have rock in the middle, you have some ground, and you have some mountains in the background. So this is basically what I did. You can kind of see it's basically the same layout. You have some rocks over here. Okay, you got some mid-ground action, and you have some mountains in the background. I got rid of a lot of that white back there. And what I also did was I kind of followed this idea of putting other sub-layers in between. So instead of having just one rock, I have one foreground rock here. I have another one right there in this area, maybe another one here. The midground has all these different areas. The background has, there's some rocks back here, some rocks, some clouds, and hazy sunlight coming in. And that's basically what it is. What are some of the ways that I have why do I have my focal area here, and why is it an area where people kind of want to look? Number one, it has value contrast. It has basically the lightest light next to the darkest dark, and that contrast is going to cause vibrations that your eye is going to pick up on, and your eye kind of starts zooming into those areas. And it has a lot of small shapes. It has all these shapes breaking down into smaller pieces, and those smaller shapes, those details, your eye starts to zoom in into those detailed areas. Okay, so value contrast, smaller shapes, and it has contrasting edges. So that is very important. These sharp edges back here, right around this area, a lot of sharp edges. There's a lot of loose edges back here, which almost makes it look like a blurry, gives it like a blurred effect, and that blurry effect really helps, push those areas back further and gets this into focus. So it's kind of like when you see an old picture or a photo and you have something really in focus and the rest of it is kind of blurry along the edges. You don't really pay attention to those blurry areas because you can't really tell what it is. You can get a feel for it, but you can't tell exactly what it is, so you're not really going to look at it that long. But when you see the in-focus areas with all the detail, that's where you're going to look. So we want to keep that. Got some value control. You squint your eye at this painting. It has a big 2/3 section of light, about a 1/3 section of dark, okay? And that's very, very important. Value control, right? Very, very important. So now I got my focal points here. I have my one, another one over here, another one over here. These are just interesting places to look at, perhaps, which basically follow within the space breakdown kind of theory, breaking down things into thirds. Now, there's a lot of shapes in this painting, okay? A lot of rhythms, and rhythms are very, very important. Rhythms help create motion, almost like the whole idea of what this is. This is a rhythm. It creates motion. So what are some of the rhythms in here that are important? If you kind of look at it, okay, you see swooping lines and swooping lines and swooping lines, okay? So here are a lot of, here are a lot of those swooping lines, okay? Just going all everywhere. And if you kind of look at them, a lot of them kind of point and direct and all crash into this one area. And that's really important.